Okay, that committee will come to order. Clayton, would you please call the roll?
Senator Craigo,
Excused.
Senator Ide,
Here.
Senator McEwen,
Excused.
Senator Pearson,
I'm here.
Chairman French.
Here.
We have a quorum.
See what happens when it's the last ag meeting? Everybody runs for cover. So first up this morning, we're gonna take 15 minutes or so to have Stacia Berry come up and Mr. Luthi and visit with us, if they would. I'll let Mr. Luthi start out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you all. My name is Randall Luthi. I'm Policy Director for Governor Gordon. And this morning I get to do one of the most favorite things you can do if you work in the governor's office, and that is just take a minute or two and introduce you to the governor's nominees for various boards and commissions. And the Senate plays such a crucial part of that as you all review them and eventually, hopefully, confirm them all as well. Today we're dealing with the Office of State Lands, and I thought I'd take just a minute. What should a state lands director be? I know it's something I think what you first begin with is it's someone who's got to understand the agricultural industry. You also need someone that knows Wyoming, understands its culture, and I think also understands in particularly what I often refer to as Wyoming's crusty ranchers, because we have a few of those throughout the state.
No.
None here in the room.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah,
Nice
yeah.
correction.
Yep, except maybe Mr. Magagna. But I don't know where to go with that. He will get even, I'm sure. We also need someone that actually has a knowledge of Wyoming communities and some of their needs, because it's a very unique position. You actually deal with, land leases, which are normally grazing, but we also have oil and gas, we have the other activities, and then the whole other side of that program is working with the investment board and providing grants to communities. So you do have to have a wide knowledge, and I think it's and what I'm pleased to tell you is I'd like to introduce you to Stacia Berry, which just is uniquely and wonderfully qualified for that job. She has 2 degrees from the University of Wyoming, which I personally think is very helpful and very important. She did wander off south for another degree, but fortunately she returned, and she has, I believe in her words, she has repented and come back to the fold. With that, she's also practiced law. She's currently with the Cook Law Firm. But she also practiced law with our great representative, Harriet Hageman, as well, in an earlier part of her career. So you've got someone that's got a legal experience, you've got someone that's got Wyoming experience, and she wrangled horned Herefords for much of her life. So she's got someone with actual hands-on practical experience as well. So once again, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Stacia Berry.
Thank you very much, Stacia. You want to tell us a little about yourself, a little more? You did a good job, but I'm sure there's more.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you for your time today and your consideration. I'm a 4th generation Wyomingite. My family homesteaded 20 miles northeast of Cheyenne in 1910. And so we have been fortunate enough to enjoy an agricultural way of life and a rural upbringing, which has shaped my worldview. Growing up where you can ride a tractor with your dad or help during calving season is a unique experience. To then join 4-H and FFA so you can raise steers, to save money, to go to college at the University of Wyoming was a great experience for me. In high school, as I mentioned, I was in 4-H and FFA. I'm a product of career and technical education. Had great experiences there, and even was able to serve as a state FFA officer and later as the national FFA secretary. Through an experience like that at age 19, I was able to travel to 40 states in 1 year, as well as Japan, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. Being able to have an experience like that has made me such a proud Wyomingite. To be able to carry the banner for Wyoming everywhere I went as a youth really instilled in me a pride for our state and the people of our state. When I graduated from high school, I did go to the University of Wyoming for my undergraduate and got a bachelor's of animal science. As mentioned, I did go to Colorado State for my master's degree, and I hope that you will be lenient with me. Because I
La,
came
la,
back,
la,
and
la,
as
la, la.
mentioned, I tried to repent by doing 3 years of hard time in law school, which was great education, and was fortunate enough when I graduated from law school to receive my first job in legal practice with Harriet Hageman and Kara Brighton, where I was able to practice water and natural resource law, both water quantity and quality, as well as private property issues and civil litigation. Great mentors and teachers as a first-time attorney. In fact, both Harriet and Kara were the first attorneys that my family of ranchers were willing to trust. And so they were the great role models to me. I had a unique opportunity to be invited to serve as the deputy director at the Department of Agriculture under the leadership of Doug Miyamoto, where it provided me a peek behind the curtain. I didn't know what was happening as the wheels of government were rolling inside of an agency, and I felt like it was a huge learning opportunity for me, especially to jump into a regulatory agency like that. So great learning opportunities there. While at the Department of Ag, some of the issues that were bigger during my tenure were the hemp program, getting delegated authority from our federal partners to run the hemp program. When ARPA money came in, helping with the Wyoming Meat Processing Expansion Grant, I was able to assist with that, as well as management of the department and work with all of the different divisions. 3 years ago, I went back into private practice at Cook Law, where our firm does primarily civil litigation. We work for large ag commodities as outside general counsel work, as well as trust and estate, and I still continue to practice water law as well. So that's some background on me.
All right, thank you very much. Just a quick question. What do you think, since ag is such a huge part of Wyoming's history and economy and everything, what things do you think you can bring that might bring the ag community and your office closer together, or be able to relate to each other better? Or, you know, it seems like sometimes we are going in different directions, and it's hard to bring it back. But any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask that question is relationships. When I walked in this room today, I felt like it was filled with friends. I was excited to see people that I hadn't seen in a while, that represent industry groups, that represent important pieces of the ag industry. And so I think first and foremost, those relationships are going to be critical. Fostering an open door that says, send us your feedback, let's have a conversation, let's make sure we're not missing the boat with each other. And so I think those relationships will be critical. And I think some of it is in the fabric of who I am. Because I come from the ag industry, I have a respect and an understanding for a ranch that might identify as having state parcels as a part of their ranch identity. And that to me is not a strange concept because of my background. And so I think because of, you know, what I've been around my entire life, that will shape some of my understanding of the requests and the needs of the ag community.
Any thoughts on, I know a biggie anymore is the Supreme Court ruling that those state lands need to be taxed. Any thoughts on that, on how we can navigate through that process?
Now, here's where I'm going to give you an answer like an attorney and not an agriculturalist, because it depends.
All right, give
So,
us the attorney interpretation here.
Well, and my interpretation will be this. I can't give you a direct answer because the court has said one thing and the legislature is also at work doing something to balance those interests. And so as a member of the executive branch, I'm prepared to take the interpretations of the court and the law of the legislature and try and implement them as correctly as possible.
Perfect legal answer. Committee, do you have any questions for Stacia? Senator Iden?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stacia, thanks for coming here today. Look forward to working with you. Get confirmed by the Senate. You know, one comment you made that I always question a little bit is our federal partners. a lot of times it doesn't feel like a partnership very much. Got our Rock Springs RMP, the Buffalo RMP, our, oil and gas with the last administration almost totally shut down on any new leasing. What can you comment on there, or let us know where you come from, how we navigate that? What feels like we're always subservient, we're not really partners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, great question. I was able to work closely with the policy division at the Wyoming Department of Agriculture during my time there, and their sole focus is to work hand in hand with those federal partners and try and work on that relationship. And I think you're right. I think the problem has been many times it doesn't feel like a partnership. Sometimes it feels like a dictatorship. Sometimes it feels like we're not being heard. I think relationships continue to play a big part, and I think we're seeing a real shakeup in how things are being handled federally. And so I would be very interested to see what the next 6 months to 1 year brings with the changes that we're seeing federally, because you watch the relationships evolve with the leadership. And I think that the leadership will change those relationships, and I hope that it will strengthen our ability to make sure that we protect what is most important to Wyoming.
Will you reach out to the Department of Interior and the state's BLM director? Will you reach out to those folks where they're a big part of what happens in Wyoming?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I certainly can. Like I say, my relationships is that foundation. And so part of that collaborative piece, yesterday when I spoke to your colleagues at the Appropriations Committee, they asked me if I had a vision for things that I could do with this department. And I gave them 3 terms that I wanted to use. And that was customer service, collaboration, and common sense. And so part of that collaboration piece for me is federal partners, it's state partners, it's industry groups, and it's obviously working with the other members of the SLIB board and throughout the executive branch. So we're gonna try and make a lot of friends.
I was glad to hear the common sense thing. That's a big thing. Senator Pearson, do you have any comments or questions of Stacia?
I don't have any questions. I'm just happy to meet you and excited to work with you, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it's 16 after 8. Any further comments? Or, well, it's great of you to come in, and we appreciate it, and let's all work together.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. Thank you. Okay, our first up is House Bill number 133. Sanctuary cities, counties, and state prohibitions. Representative, take it away if you'll go through it for us. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thanks for having me. Joel Guggenmoss with House District 55.
Is your mic on?
Yes, it is.
Oh, thank you.
Does it need to be closer?
Yeah, a little bit, but even with hearing aids, I can't hear.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, sanctuary cities, counties, and state prohibitions. This bill ensures uniform enforcement of federal immigration laws across Wyoming by prohibiting sanctuary policies at the state and local levels. It promotes cooperation between local governments, state employees, and federal authorities to safeguard public safety and uphold the rule of law. By penalizing noncompliance and restricting the misuse of public funds for sanctuary purposes, the bill prioritizes accountability and transparency. Its swift implementation will strengthen Wyoming's commitment to secure and lawful governance. And with that, I will walk you through the bill.
Yeah, please.
On page 1, lines 1 through 7, that gives you a brief description of the bill. Page 1, section 1 is creating 2 new statutes. Page 2, lines 3 through page 3, line 23 is establishing definitions. Page 4, subsection A, lines 5 through 18 gets into the meat of the bill on what is prohibited as it pertains to the governing body of cities, towns, and counties. On page 4, subsection B, line 20 through page 5 of line 18, dives into the penalties of cities, towns, and counties violating subsection A. Page 5, subsection C, line 20 through page 6, line 2, goes into protecting state employees from being hindered from carrying out their official duties of communicating or cooperating with federal officials or law enforcement officers with regard to reporting immigration status information. Page 6, subsection D, lines 4 and 5, prohibits any executive order declaring Wyoming a sanctuary state. Page 6, subsection E, lines 7 through 15, goes into the penalties of local officials or employees who refuse to communicate or cooperate with federal officials or law enforcement officers. And section 2 through page 7 amends 2 statutes to add specific language to reference this bill. And page 8, subsection 3, or section 3, provides for an immediate effective date. This bill, I just want to clarify, has nothing to do with race. That's not the intent of this bill. I thank God every day this nation that we live in has such diversity in the peoples. It would be a real sorry place to live if we all looked the same, talk the same. So I am very grateful that we have the immigration policies that we have to allow people from all over to be able to come to America and enjoy the life that we can live here. But there is a correct way of doing it, and there's an illegal way of doing it. So that is all this bill is trying to facilitate, is that there is no hindrance to that process. With that, I'll take any questions.
I've got one on page 6, line 13, and on line 15. Imprisonment for not less than 5 years, and then on down there, fine of $20,000. Where did you come up with that? Or did you come up, how'd you come up with that? That, I know, 5 years is a long time, if you'd comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those were numbers that I just came up with. I wanted a starting point. And the reason I put those in there is because when there are violations of elected officials, local officials that basically violate their oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Wyoming, that's a pretty severe offense in my viewpoint. So I wanted to set some pretty severe consequences. That was just a starting point that I just put in there. But if you are thinking that's a little too much, I'm open for your recommendations.
Well, I was just curious, we may discuss that. I don't know what the others are thinking on that one. But I was just curious how you come up with a 5-year prison term and up to $20,000, so thanks.
Those were just the numbers that basically came in. There was no method to that. It was just when I was talking with our legal staff and I was asking these questions, they said, what did you want to put in there? And those were what I decided to put in there. They really gave no recommendations per se.
Okay. Any questions of the representative at this point? Yeah, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative. I like your bill here. Can you, there's a few states south of here, Texas, Louisiana, that make, illegal immigration a crime in the state, and they can deport them you know, without having to wait for federal, you know, laws to come into place. I don't think your bill really addresses that, but just for future legislation, I mean, the 10th Amendment of our Constitution gives us the right to, you know, defend our borders here as well and deport them and make it a crime to be here illegally. So any comments on that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Senator Ide, thank you for that. I would be very open to legislation to promote that, because as a state, I believe we have every right to do that, for sure. Yes, this is a first step in that process, but I'd be happy to bring something in the future.
Good first step.
Okay, Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Chairman French. Hi, Representative Gumas. My question is do you feel that if there isn't teeth in some of these bills, that these laws won't be enacted? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Pearson, thank you for that. Yes, I mean, I believe that is why we are as a nation at whole seeing an increase in criminal activities, because the punishment for the crime is negligible. It's nothing compared to the crime itself. So anytime there is really no fear of violating a law, you will see the laws violated. So I believe the teeth, and that's why I put that in there, is I wanted to give it teeth so that people would hopefully think twice before violating this law.
All right, any other comments or questions of the representative at this point? Seeing none, stick around. I'll open it up to public comment now. Does anybody would like to comment? Just kind of work your way up front. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Good Ag Committee. On and in support of the bill. Mr. Chairman, this is a great bill. I think it's long overdue, and I'll tell you, having listened to debate on it before and public testimony on it before, I'm personally exhausted of the pushback that this bill has received from associations that oversee our counties and our municipalities specifically, and I'll tell you why. I constantly hear that they don't want to be told what to do, and they push this local control excuse. And I heard it best, or I read it best, from a gentleman by the name of David Bottomley in 2019, who talked a little bit about the local control excuse. And he stated that there are some people who mistakenly argue that local government, by virtue of being local, is somehow allowed to violate individual rights. Some will even argue that when state and local governments conflict, that the conservative position is to support local government regardless of the issue. And he states that that's frankly absurd. The primary duty of both federal and state governments, as defined by the respective constitutions, is to protect the rights of its citizens. After all, that's the reason why people form a government in the first place, to band together for physical protection and the protection of their rights against outsiders or their neighbors, and in this case, illegals. It is not now, nor has it ever been, a conservative value for the state or the federal government to allow local governments to trample upon the rights of its citizens. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, if we don't do something about this and put some rules in place as state government, there'll be a strain on our local governments, specifically on local government resources, such as our public schools, our emergency rooms, our jails, our prisons, our criminal justice system in general. On and for the bill.
Thank you. Stick around, Representative. Any questions of Representative Rodriguez-Williams? Seeing none, state your name for the record, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Antonio Serrano. I'm the Advocacy Director for the ACLU of Wyoming. The ACLU of Wyoming opposes House Bill 133. I was born and raised here in Wyoming. My father is an immigrant. So I've been living and working with immigrants of all statuses my entire life. I've also been an immigrant advocate since 2017. I've worked with immigrant families and individuals in Cheyenne, Laramie, Casper, Evanston, Rock Springs, Cody, Powell, and Jackson. I also work very closely with immigrant advocates across the state. And I can tell you with 100% certainty, there are no sanctuary cities or counties in our state. There are no organizers like myself organizing to become sanctuary cities or counties. And there are no government officials having these conversations. This is not something that is happening in Wyoming, and it will not happen in Wyoming. And if it was, folks like me would be shouting it from the rooftops. I have spent years working with immigrant families and individuals that are building our state, and I have been able to learn how bills like this impact them. I have spent a lot of my time having conversations with people, learning how bills like this are received by those communities. And you can trust me when I say that you are sending a message to immigrants that they are not welcome in Wyoming. People can say you are only targeting undocumented immigrants, but the bill sends a very different message. And that message is enforced with the way that this bill forces local law enforcement to work with federal immigration agents. When people say it will not impact families in Wyoming, they're wrong. It is estimated that 1 in 15 US residents, or some 22 million people, live in mixed status families. This bill will cause undocumented immigrants and mixed status families to be less likely to report crimes, eroding trust with local law enforcement, and messing up the chances of investigations happening. So our immigration system is broken. That is true. As someone who is very familiar with how it works, is actively making it harder for immigrants to come here. The only people who are able to do it the quote unquote legal way are people who have access to a lot of financial support. It can cost up to $10,000 to get status here, and most working class people cannot afford that. I don't have $10,000 in the bank to just spend willy-nilly. Congress must find a way to pass comprehensive immigration reform, but in the meantime, forcing our communities to devote scarce local resources to breaking up families is not the answer. Wyoming used to believe that local governments should not have their rights taken away and how to make decisions about how to use taxpayer money to protect their citizens. If you want to keep Wyoming safe, and please do not pass this bill for pushing immigrants further into the shadows. Thank you for your time. I stand for any questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. It's good to hear the other side of the argument. Do you remember, I can't put a date on it, in the past governor was looking at making Wyoming a sanctuary state. Do you have any recollection of that? And I don't know if it ever made legislation, but it was in the news quite a bit. So are you familiar with that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I can say I've been doing, Mr. Chairman, please forgive me, Senator Ide. I can say I've been doing this work for a long time, talking with people who have been doing this work longer than I've been alive in the state. And that's never something that's came up. That's not the Wyoming I know. I don't think any Wyoming governor would do that. So no, I'm not familiar with that, and I don't think that that's something we need to worry about.
You said something, why do you feel that if this passes, it would kind of be seen as going after the immigrant community or something along those lines? Well, I don't understand that. I mean,
well, as I said, 1 in about 15 people is in a mixed status family. That means there's a lot of people in Wyoming who are documented, who are citizens, who have family, who are undocumented. So when you pass a bill that's targeting one immigrant, you're targeting all immigrants, whether you say you are or not. That's how these bills are received by the immigrant community. I spend a lot of time learning how they see them, and that is how they see them.
and I get that, but they can also work towards becoming a legal citizen too at the same time, can't they? I mean,
Mr. Chairman?
Get legal status?
Mr. Chairman, obtaining legal status is an incredibly difficult process. It can take 20 to 30 years. It can cost upwards of $10,000. If you're struggling to survive or you're fleeing for asylum, I have talked to individuals who work for a week and only make $10. And how do you save up to pay for a lawyer if that's all you're doing? I can say, if it was my family starving, I would do what I have to do to protect them and to feed them.
Yeah.
So I don't fault or judge any individual for making the choices that they have to make. And also, a lot of the folks who are undocumented are overstayed visas. There are people who did do it the quote-unquote right way, and they just haven't been able to get things updated. So you're catching a lot of people who have been doing the right thing here in Wyoming, who are paying taxes, honestly, who are working hard to build our state. This is telling them we're not welcome here.
Okay, I still struggle with that a little bit, but I understand where you're coming from, sir. I truly do. Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Did I say that right?
It's pronounced Serrano, but that's fine with me.
Sorry.
It's all good.
So this is going to be more of a statement, but I understand where you're coming from. My family has a history of hiring immigrant workers my entire life for probably 5 generations. There are processes to get immigrant workers up here on H-2A and H-2B visas. And the employers have to pay for those visas. There's no cost to the immigrants at all. So when immigrants are overstaying their visas, that's illegal as well. And if there are employers that are allowing them to overstay their visas, they're not in compliance either. And so there are avenues for immigrants to come up here at no cost to the immigrant, because the employers have to pay all of those costs. As far as getting a green card, things like that, I understand that immigrants don't feel like that they can afford that. But if an employer truly believes that they want an immigrant to have a green card rather than a visa so that they can stay and not have to go back and forth, a lot of employers will pay for those green cards. We did for a few of our workers. And so, you know, to make the argument that there's no way that immigrants can come in legally, and they shouldn't be overstaying their visas, because then they're not in compliance. If they're not in compliance and they go back and it's found out that they overstayed their visas, there's a 10-year delay before they can get back into the country. And so that shouldn't be happening either on the visa, you know, as far as the workers that are coming in, or the employers allowing that to happen, because that does affect whether they can go back and forth freely. So I understand your concerns. I understand that. And our workers were like family to us for years. We had a few workers that were with us for 50 years. But we were in compliance, and we did what the law told us to do as far as whether they could stay for 3 years on extensions, go back for 3 months. Now there's more regulations, and we comply by that. And our workers do the same. And so there are ways for these workers to get around these loopholes and be able to be in the country legally. And I'm sorry that everyone feels like we're attacking them, but we have got to protect our state, and we have got to protect our country. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I worked for an employer previously who brought immigrants in that way. They're held hostage. They are not free to do what they would like to do. They're not free to work anywhere else. They're not free to seek employment with a different employer. they're held hostage, and the standards that they must meet are high. I know the employer I used to work for required a veterinary degree when they were just doing general labor. So those systems are not fair, and they're not easily accessible for everybody. If you're not part of our community, you don't know how it feels. If being like family is not being family. So like when you can't compare the two, because you losing a worker is not the same as somebody losing their parent, with all due respect.
Thank you. I would kind of push back on your statement, held hostage. When I was growing up, my parents raised sugar beets, and we called them nationals, come out of old Mexico, and either 2 to 4 each year to thin sugar beets. And I was right out there with them all day long, thinning sugar beets with them. I've thinned more sugar beets I care to remember, but they were like friends. We provided housing for them, and they'd always, hey, Tim, you know, the limited English, but I could understand them. Here, you want to have supper with us? And then I'd sit with them and eat supper and stuff. So I didn't view them as somebody we were holding down. I mean, I remember my dad would go with them after a certain amount of time and help them. I think he'd go to like a Western Union or something and help them. They always sent all their money back home and help them send their wages back home. So I never viewed them as our family holding them hostage. I mean, I kind of find that a little offensive to our situation when I was growing up, because I was in the fields with them all day long swinging a hoe. Now, some, I will grant you, there probably are cases out there that are not good. So anyway, just wanted to push back just a little bit, sir.
No, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. The immigration system was very different in those days than it is today. And those workers didn't have to meet a threshold that they do today. And I know what working in those fields was like, because I spent most of my childhood working in those fields too. So I know that hard work, and I know what those families have to, I know where that money goes to. So I'm glad that you saw them as people. I just wish that we would all see them as people and not try and pass laws that are dehumanizing to them right now.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, sir. Stick around. Any other public comment?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob McLaurin. I'm with the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. We represent the state's 99 cities and towns. We're standing in opposition to this bill. We don't, in our opinion, we don't believe this is necessary. There are no, as the previous speaker stated, there are no sanctuary cities in Wyoming. I managed the town of Jackson for over 20 years, worked with 4 sheriffs and 3 chiefs of police during that time. And during that time, we were not sanctuary cities. We were accused of it, but we fully cooperated with ICE. I spoke to the Teton County Sheriff about a half an hour ago. Jackson is not, and is not planning on becoming a sanctuary city. So we don't believe this bill is necessary. We support the intent of the bill, but we just don't think it's necessary because nobody's doing it and nobody's planning on doing it. Thank you, sir.
Wasn't there an incident in Jackson just recently that ICE wanted Jackson Sheriff to hold somebody and they turned him loose just before they got there? Something along those lines.
I saw, Mr. Chairman, I saw something, but I'm not familiar with that. like I said, I spoke directly to the high sheriff not 30 minutes ago because I didn't want to make a statement that was incorrect. So,
Okay.
thanks, sir.
Any questions of the WAM representative? Seeing none, stick around. Thanks.
Thanks, sir.
Jeremiah?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the County Commissioners Association. As you've heard from a couple of speakers, no county has or is currently considering becoming a sanctuary county, and I don't expect that to change any point in the future. Mr. Chairman, if it's your intent to say we shouldn't do this and the state shouldn't do it or municipalities shouldn't do it, that's your choice. That's a policy decision that can be made. But again, no one is doing it. One of my criticisms of this legislation in the past has been that it has focused on cities and cities and counties only. Do appreciate the sponsor has included the state, at least partially, in this legislation. And that's where I want to focus a bit of my frustration with this current draft. Mr. Chairman, if you turned to page 5, and it goes over to page 6, is really the only reference to the state. It says no state employee shall prohibit or restrict communication. Then it goes on and says that there shall be no executive order to declare the state of Wyoming as a sanctuary state. What it doesn't do is say what happens if the state does any of those things or a state employee does any of those things. What the bill does do is say if a local government does this or a local employee does this, then their state funding is going to be taken away. And we're going to distribute that to all the other local governments proportionally, which I would call into question whether that's even allowed for some of the funds that are referenced under this. But nonetheless, it says that about local employees. What it also says, and this is on page 6, and I'm starting at line 7, it says any local employee is subject to all of those punishable felonies and imprisonment and fines. But it doesn't say that any state employee would be subject to the same penalties or the like. So I call into question why it's good for local governments, but it's not good for the state to be subject to those penalties. So, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that needs to change. I would suggest that the penalty is rather stiff for this sort of an offense. I also think that language relative to redistributing the funds, which is found on page 5, lines 10 through 18, probably should come out and is rather inappropriate in legislation like this. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions, but, again, if you want to make the policy, but let's make it a fair playing field, or take out the penalties altogether and just say this is a prohibition, which I think is a better way to frankly do it.
Well, thank you, sir. You stated there is no sanctuary, cities, towns, can't, whatever. I think this is maybe viewed as a preemptive thing. I think that's where the bringer of the bill is coming from. So, any questions of Jeremiah? Stick around. Any other public comment? Mr. Moline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau. Based on my members' policy, sitting in support of this bill. Some of the issues brought up are important, but they're, to overhaul the immigration system is not something that we can do at the state level. That takes a federal work, and I think, I wholeheartedly agree, we do need to do something at the federal level, but I think this bill dealing with Wyoming, I do agree with the previous speaker, I think there needs to be something at the state level too. But sitting in support of this bill, I would take any questions you or the committee may have for me.
Any questions of Mr. Moline? Senator Ide?
Would you agree, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moline, would you agree that Wyoming, under the 10th Amendment, has the right to make a crime out of illegal immigration and prosecute from there? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, I don't know. I'm not a constitutional expert. I'm not an attorney. I would have to beg off to having somebody with more knowledge more accurately answer that question.
Well, when you're not riding that horse, maybe you can start studying law.
Mr. Chairman, don't get me started.
All right, thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Here's your chance, folks. Any other public comment? We don't have anybody online on this one. Okay, thanks, Clayton. All right, the bringer of the bill, can you answer some of the concerns, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with you that this is a preemptive legislation to keep, rather than reactive. I'd rather preempt this from becoming an issue rather than reacting to a situation that would happen. You know, I would hope that this would never happen in Wyoming. But I've seen things happen in our nation that I never thought I would ever see. So this is preemptive. And I would hope that no governor or local official or anything would even begin to go down this road. But so as far as the let's see, where was that? On the penalties, I would be open on page 6.
State the page and number, line, please.
Page 6, line 7. I would be subsection E, so that would be any, and I would be open to any state or local official or employee. I think that would be a good addition to cover that basis.
So you would, on line 7,
Just
E, any
state.
state or local official?
Yeah, probably state, comma, local official or employee would be probably how I would frame that.
Okay,
And then there was a typo on page 3, line 12, where it says employee or peace officer,
right.
contractor or agent, and then there's an additional or acting. We need to just strike that or before acting.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Page 3, line 12,
Page 312, strike,
the or before acting towards the end of that line.
or acting.
Yeah, just strike or. There's one too many ors in that sentence.
Okay,
I believe that was,
and then can you address on, you might be getting there, page 5, I think it was brought up by Jeremiah, page 5, lines 10 through 18. Can you address that? Redistributing funds if somebody.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. In talking with our legal staff, they did not bring up any issues with that, as far as if that's even legal. Is that what you mean by addressing, or?
He brought up the fact that if this advances Jeremiah, you want to come back up? It wouldn't be right to redistribute funds if somebody didn't comply or whatever. Jeremiah, you can state it better than I can.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I can just maybe use a couple of examples for you and you'll recognize these.
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
just use payment in lieu of taxes or secure rural schools. Those are funds that come from the federal government and are given to the state treasurer. And then he redistributes those out to the counties, proportionate to the allocation that the federal government has established. The way I read this legislation is to say that, let's say, one of our counties has one of these policies or their staff are imposing one of these policies. The state is going to withhold those funds from going to that particular county, and they're going to proportionally distribute it to the others. And I don't think that's allowed by the federal law and the federal distributions for those particular funds.
For the PILT funds.
Now, you maybe could do this for direct distribution, which is a state resource, and you guys get to dictate how that's going. But those are federal funds that come into the state and then get distributed out according to a formula to the counties under specific allocations.
But those PILT funds are a whole different animal.
Right. The federal government determines how much, for you, when you were a commissioner, how much Park County is going to get, or Secure Rural Schools, they determined what your allocation is going to be. It just had to come from the state because that's where the feds send it to one location to then redistribute it. Those are two examples that come to my mind immediately with this sort of language that could be really problematic.
So if we were to, if the bringer of the bill was agreeable or whatever, you said line 10 through 18, where exactly on 10 or 9 would the cutoff be, Mr. Ryman?
Mr. Chairman, I was suggesting but the, and then you could take out.
On 9?
Starting at page 5, line 10, it's at the very end, but the.
Period after county and then.
Yes, you'd put a period after county.
And then take out from, but on down through 18. Is that what you're suggesting?
Correct.
I'll let the bringer of the bill go over that.
Okay.
And see what his thoughts are.
Mr. Chairman, I think that would be good just to avoid any issues with that being implemented. So I would say strike on line 10, but and then the rest through line 18.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Iden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, that's, maybe you want to take a little more time and talk to legal counsel on that before you do it. I mean, that's Chairman's prerogative here.
Well-
And what, I'm not sure, I haven't studied it long enough. I think it's a good comment for sure, but yeah. Thank
Since
you, Mr.
this, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Senator. Since this is the last committee meeting, Thursday, everybody, whatever's reported out, today's the end of it. So if we were to pass this with that, with an amendment, taking that out or leave it alone, goes to the general committee of the whole, there would have to be amendments at that point. Because I don't see how he can, at this point, go back to council where as soon as we gavel out, it's done deal. I mean, what we approve or disapprove is kind of the end of the story today. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, at taking further look, I'm wondering if we should, let's see, but the Office of State Lands and Investments and the Department of Revenue shall not distribute funds that were withheld. during the period of non-compliance with this section to the city or town, county that violated subsection A of this section. Would it be better if we just said, and the Department of, on page 5, line 8, and the
Line
Department.
8?
Yes, correct. Starting there, and the Department of Revenue shall resume distribution of state and just basically take out the federal funding. Would that solve that issue to where then you're not dealing with the federal funds, just the state?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we could bring a committee of the whole amendment if, after we get it out here. One of the reasons I'm worried is we passed it just recently, a standing committee amendment, and now we're pulling it back out because there was more, discussion on it with LSO, and just don't want to have to put it in and take it out and put it back in where everybody's different opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So Senator, you would rather just leave it as it is, and then we pass it out of here on a committee of the whole, have an amendment. Is that correct? Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess we'll leave it up to the bringer of the bill and what you think too. I was just bringing that up as discussion. Yeah, thank you.
If it's left, I would suggest that the bringer of the bill get with Mr. Ryman and come up with acceptable language as an amendment, and maybe visit with Senator Ide also.
Okay.
So, because it would have to be one of us bring the amendment to the Senate floor. So I would suggest you guys work together to kind of any concerns you may have. Are you guys good with that? Okay.
Yes.
Next up is, let's see, I've scribbled all over this thing. The bottom of page 5, line 20, I circled no state employee. Anybody else make a point on that? All right, let's do this. We've got several things here. Let's discuss the penalties. The page 6, line 13, starting on line 12. Official shall be guilty of a felony punishable by imprisonment of not less than 5 years and not more than 10. So 5 to 10 is your sentence. And a fine not more than $20,000 or both. How does the committee feel about this? I know the bringer of the bill came up with those terms. So sounds like you're willing to maybe negotiate on that or not. What's your thoughts, sir?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I set the bar high in anticipation that it would probably be whittled down a little bit. So yes, whatever the committee deems appropriate, that's fine.
Any thoughts, committee, on this one? Leave it alone or trim it back? Seeing none at the let that fester for a while. That also, if it makes it out of here, can be amended on the floor too. So, often it's better if the committee that's addressing the bill kind of mix some of these amendments for the floor debate. No. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to make an adjustment on myself and to see if you are more
Pardon?
amiable? Would you like me to make an adjustment on that, just
Yeah,
to see if you're
yeah,
more amiable?
see what your thoughts
Okay.
are right now.
Instead of 5 to 10 years, we could do 2 to 5.
Okay,
And the fine of, we could do 10,000.
Committee, what do you think of that suggestion from the bringer of the bill? That's, you know, anytime something like this, if it would pass and become law and somebody, some official does something to face 5 to 10 years in prison, that's pretty, you know, because some other crimes out there that are pretty heinous don't get that kind of sentencing sometimes. You know, so that's why I bring it up. Committee, what do you think? Senator Ide?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's, I think that'll help it in, you know, our body for sure. I mean, you need something pretty stiff and stiff penalties to get people's attention anymore. It seems like $20,000 is a big number. Might not be if we keep having inflation like we are. But yeah, I'm in favor of that, this amendment.
Senator Pearson, what do you think? Okay, that would be an amendment. Bringer of the bill, representative, if you brought it up. So 2 to 5 and a 10,000. So you're fine with that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, any other public comment on this? And we don't have anybody online. So any closing comments, or are you good? All right, well, stick around, because is there, what's the committee's pleasure here?
Move the bill.
Do we need to say what the amendments are?
Yeah, after we move the bill.
I'll move the bill.
The bill was moved by Senator Ide,
I'll
second by Senator Pearson. All right, now we'll work the bill. There's a number of, let's start with the, our attorneys did. Through Olson, yeah. Oh, it's just being held there. Okay. Senator Olson's got a amendment on page 1, line 3. Page 3, line 12. Jeez, I'm having a hard time today. After contractor or agent, delete or. Somebody want to move that? Move that amendment's been moved by Senator Pearson.
Mr. Chairman, before we go, do we want to put all of these on one amendment and then vote on it all together with the other amendments that we're going to make in here? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, if you guys want to, there'll be a number of them, and then we can vote on all of them, or,
We might divide them, whatever, yeah.
okay. That is one amendment. That'll be number 1. All right, let's go through the bill here. Page 1, I didn't write anything down on page 1. Page 2 is just definitions. Page 3, I have on line 12, taking out or. Do the rest of you, if you have that?
That's this one. That's this one.
Okay, that's the Olson amendment. Okay, good, excellent. On page 5,
just gonna leave that alone for now.
You wanna leave it and then bring in, yeah, the bringer of the bill and Mr. Ryman, we're gonna work on that one. Okay, we'll just leave that alone. How about on line 20? C, no state employee. I don't know why I circled that one. Alright. So on page 6, line 7, E, after any, put state, so it'd be any state, comma, would have to read or, wouldn't it? Any state, comma, or local official.
I think we're
No,
okay, it's a state, local official or employee, so I think we're good.
just state, comma,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
That would be one. Below that, on 6, on the punishment part of it, amendment on line 13, going from 5 years, that reduce it to 2, and not more than 10, that would be reduced to 5. So it would read not less than 2 years and not more than 5 years, and a fine of not more than $10,000 or both. That would be an amendment there. Have I missed anything? Committee?
I'll second that amendment.
That's
She moved
inclusive
it, and I
of,
don't think it ever got seconded. but
No,
I'll second it, Yeah.
so that's including all of them.
I think that's maybe.
Okay. It's been moved by, all the amendments moved by, Clayton, did you get all those?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to confirm, the proposed amendment on page 5, striking the remainder of, from line 10 to line 18, we're just saving that for the floor, is that correct? Thank you.
I understand.
The, starting on 8, clear it down through 18, yeah, that's not gonna be an amendment. They're gonna try to work it out and bring an amendment to, possibly Senator Ide or Senator Pearson, somebody in the Senate, okay? So you got the rest of it, right? So, all these have been moved by Senator Pearson, seconded by Senator Ide. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair is aye also. All right, next is the vote on the bill, and Mr. or Clayton, Senator McEwen left his absentee voting form, voting aye on this. So if you do the roll call, please.
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 133 as amended. Senator Crago,
Excused.
Senator Ide,
Aye.
and Senator McEwen is aye.
Is an aye, yes.
Senator Pearson,
Aye.
Chairman French.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is 4 aye and 1 excused.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, House Bill number 133 has passed as amendment. God, I can't talk today. As amended on a 4 in favor, 1 excused. Okay, next up is House Bill 147, prohibition of institutional discrimination. Representative Rodriguez Williams is here to present this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and members of the Senate Ag Committee. I'm Representative Rachel Rodriguez Williams with House District 50, and I'm here to introduce to you House Bill 147 and ask for your favorable consideration. With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to walk you through the bill.
If you would, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill takes a necessary acts to divisive activity by banning discrimination against any Wyomingite on the basis of race, color, ethnicity, religion, biological sex, or national origin. The Biden administration sold DEI as a benign way to address inequalities, but the words for which these letters stand have been twisted beyond all recognition to now mean the exact opposite of what most Americans and Wyomingites believe and are meant by diversity, equity, and inclusion. Wyoming government should not take any action that treats individual Americans differently or segregates them because of immutable characteristics such as race, sex, or national origin. This act restores our state government to the colorblind approach that the Constitution intends, that morality dictates, and that our national unity requires. In Section 1, beginning on page 1, we create a new chapter in Title IX that prohibits the practices of state institutions. On page 2, we list several definitions, beginning with, on line 10, diversity, equity, or inclusion means any program, activity, or policy that promotes differential or preferential treatment of individuals or classifies individuals on the basis of race, color, religion, and sex, ethnicity, or national origin. As defined in this bill.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Representative, let's take a few minutes. Senator Ide had to step out for a minute. He'll be back in just a minute, so he hears this since we're just three of us here. If you're good with that.
Sure.
Just take a few minutes,
Sure.
please. Senator, we just pause for a second so you could hear the representatives presenting the bill. Oh, no problem. So, Representative, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to?
Yeah,
Back up
yes.
a little bit?
Yeah,
Okay.
back up a little, please.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 147 takes the necessary acts to divisive activity by banning discrimination against any Wyomingite on the basis of race, color, ethnicity, religion, biological sex, or national origin. The Biden administration sold DEI as a benign way to address inequalities, but the words for which these letters stand have been twisted beyond all recognition and now mean the exact opposite of what most Americans and Wyomingites believe are meant by diversity, equity, and inclusion. I believe the Wyoming government should not take any action that treats individual Americans differently or segregates them because of immutable characteristics such as race, sex, or national origin. This act restores our state government to the colorblind approach that the Constitution intends and that national unity requires. Beginning on page 1 of the bill, we create a new section in Title 9 that prohibits practices of state institutions. On page 2, we begin with definitions, new definitions, the definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the definition of governmental entity, meaning any state, department thereof, or land-grant university, any county, city, town, school district, community college, or other political subdivision or other public corporation of the state. Moving on to line 22, we define institutional discrimination, and it means any of the following concepts. Beginning on page 3, that any race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior. That a person should be discriminated against. or adversely treated because of the person's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. In other words, nobody should be receiving preferential treatment. That the moral character of a person is determined by the person's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. That because of a person's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin, that a person is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or subconsciously. That by virtue of a person's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin, the person is inherently responsible for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. Moving on to page 4, that fault, blame, or bias should be assigned to members of a race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. That any person should accept, acknowledge, affirm, or assent to a sense of guilt, complicity, or a need to apologize on the basis of the person's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. Moving down to line 13, that meritocracy or certain traits involving hard work ethic are racist or sexist. No government entity shall engage in any DEI program, activity, or policy engage in institutional discrimination as defined in this bill, or require instruction promoting institutional discrimination. Furthermore, no government entity shall require any student, employee, contractor to attend, again, require, to attend or participate in any DEI program or training or any institutional discrimination program. This bill goes into effect July 1 of 2025. And just a few things I'll state. Essentially what this bill does is it makes it illegal to discriminate in conformance with the United States and Wyoming Constitution. Nothing in this bill, committee, prohibits celebrations based on race or heritage or culture by any means. Nothing in this bill prohibits teaching history in the classroom. What the bill does say, again, is that you cannot teach that there's a certain race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin that somebody's inherently responsible for past history or attempt to place blame on students or shame or instill shame. So I just want to clear that up right up front. And in regards to DEI hiring practices, I know that's a topic that's discussed a lot as well. I do believe in rewarding excellence and hiring based on merit. And I think, again, our state needs to get back to that. And so there are no penalties in this bill in the event that the committee, if the committee chooses to pass this bill and move it forward, I would entertain any sort of civil penalty to be added to this if the body in your chamber chooses to do so. That would be friendly. And I would stand for any questions.
Any questions of the bringer of the bill? Senator Iden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think you did a real good job with this thing. Just in particular, you know, the definitions that you put in here, I like that. That's good and explicit, and you know, make sure they don't do the same thing under a different name. So I think the definitions are really good in this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative.
Okay, stick around. Any other elected official in the room like to comment? Seen none. I'll open it up to public comment. Anybody in the room like to comment on this? Come on forward. Whoever wants to start, if you'd state your name for the record, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Sophia Gomelski. I'm a student at the university, and I'm just here to urge you to vote against this bill. I'm from Wyoming. I've lived in Wyoming my entire life, and the reason I'm urging you to vote no is because I think this bill is trying to find a problem in our state that doesn't exist, and it represents an overreach of government authority that Wyomingites don't want. This bill attempts to dictate what ideas and values are permissible, explicitly including the university. And that has been made clear in the section that says that no government entity will engage in any diversity, equity, or inclusion program, activity, or policy. This flies in the face of limited government intervention, and it threatens to erode the autonomy of our public institutions. It also doubles down on very flawed logic while being dishonest in what I think the bill is trying to solve. The state government prohibiting instruction on any subject, especially institutional discrimination, sets a very dangerous precedent. That's because while I've never been taught that anybody should be blamed for something that they didn't do, a prohibition on education that assigns blame ignores the critical difference between blaming an individual for immutable characteristics and holding people, systems, and ideologies and historical actors accountable for their actions. For example, teaching that slavery was perpetuated by white supremacy and its implications on our country is not an attack on white students. It's an acknowledgement of historical reality. As a Jewish person, I find this trend of these overreaching bills deeply troubling. My community's history is a painful reminder of what happens when societies refuse to confront uncomfortable truths. For centuries, Jews have been persecuted, discriminated against, and targeted by systems of power. The Holocaust is the most extreme example of this, but it's not the only one. And the failure to fully teach these histories, both the atrocities and the ideologies that enabled them, only makes it easier for these patterns to repeat. This bill risks creating a chilling effect in classrooms. Educators may avoid teaching difficult subjects altogether for fear of violating the law. Discussions about racism, anti-Semitism, and other forms of oppression may be watered down or eliminated, leaving students with an incomplete and sanitized view of history. Please uphold our Wyoming tradition of freedom and freedom of expression. Please don't tread on us and vote no on this bill. Thank you, and I'm here for any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead, Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sophia. So in this bill, I'm not seeing where it's saying that these things can't be taught. What it's saying is that we can't require any student, employee, or contractor to attend or participate. It doesn't say that these things can't be taught. And so, you know, and that history can't be taught. It's not saying that. But I know students that have come home from high school and have said, because of some of these programs that are being taught in our education system, that they wish that they weren't white. And that's a problem. It's not saying that these things can't be taught. It's just, and that history can't be taught. I'm all for history and knowing what our country has gone through and how we've progressed. It's just saying that they cannot require this. They cannot teach these things to make some people feel inferior to others, because everyone should be equal, right? So I just don't see that concern in this bill.
Do you want to comment, young lady? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for the question. I think that bills and legislation that kind of end up eroding and kind of watering down our history don't end up saying that in the bill language. The problem is when educators are scared to teach. I mean, I have trust in our teachers in the state of Wyoming, and I have gone to school here my entire life. I believe that they've done an excellent job. I've been at public schools, I've been at charter schools, and I don't believe that it's the role of the state government to be dictating what curriculum they can and cannot teach based on their expertise. You know, if there's individualized problems in the classroom, kids are coming home at the end of the day feeling that way, those are concerns for their teachers. It's not the role of the state government to say, we're going to start banning certain subjects, because if we set that precedent today, then next year we may come back and write a bill that does start banning history, because we've set the groundwork for that and we've allowed that to happen. That's kind of where I see the issue starting. And so I know that part of the bill does talk about trainings and things like that. You know, I personally, I have never done a DEI training as an employee at the university or in any other capacity, but I see the benefit there. I mean, as a Jewish person, I do see the way that Jewish people are discriminated to this day. And I see the benefit in having a training where it unteaches practices that people may even just subconsciously think of. You know, I think it's a good thing to teach people in Wyoming to be good and kind to one another. That's what we get taught from day one in school, and I just think that's a good thing. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the bill is just trying to state that we're all equal. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, purple, it doesn't matter. Male, female, whatever, that we're, and we shouldn't be saying things different. As far as like teaching history, that's good, but what if you had a rogue professor that was teaching that the Holocaust didn't happen, that Hitler was correct, Hamas was correct, Hezbollah was correct? How would you feel about that? I mean, altering history, altering their teaching of it. I mean, so I see where you're coming from, I really do. But we're not trying to single anybody out. I think this bill is just trying to say, hey, we're all equal. Don't be attacking, like Senator Pearson, making you, if you're white, making you feel like you're, I don't know, whatever they're trying to teach. Or if you're black or whatever religion. So anyway, thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. My name is Santi Murillo. I am the Communications Coordinator for Wyoming Equality, and we are in opposition to this bill. We are in opposition to this bill not because of the intent. I understand that we don't want discrimination. I get that. That's my entire organization's mission. However, when you start to, excuse me, by banning DEI, we're not just silencing critical conversations, we are willfully choosing to ignore history. So through DEI work, I have learned the way, it's hard to echo Sophia because I don't want to repeat what she said.
All right, say what you want to say.
Okay. But when we fail to teach history truthfully, we fail our students and we fail our workforce, we fail our future, right? That's what DEI work does. It ensures that we learn from history accurately and honestly, not a sugar-coated version, not a sanitized version, not something to make everyone feel comfortable. We need to have those discussions and have the hard truths really told to us. Banning DEI does not make discrimination disappear. It never will. It does not create fairness. Instead, it sends a clear message that some people simply do not matter and that their histories are not worth acknowledging. That is not the Wyoming that I know or the America that I know or believe in. If we truly care about fairness and equal opportunity like we really say that we do, we shouldn't be banning DEI. We should be looking in ways to expand it. We should be looking to commit to policies that uplift all individuals, right? Not just by banning programs that uncover uncomfortable truths. Hopefully I wasn't, I try not to repeat you. So I thank you and I stand for any questions.
Any questions? Thank both of you. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right, go ahead. We're gonna get tight on time here for too long. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the DEI, the definitions are getting really skewed. Every nationality on the planet has junk in its history. It doesn't matter what color you are. Where DEI, as I know it, comes into play is when only one side of the story is told. For instance, the blacks and whites, okay? Whites own slaves. White privilege comes into play. DEI just focuses on that aspect. Whereas if they really want to teach history, question to be asked was, okay, who sold those blacks in this instance into slavery? In many cases, it was other blacks from another tribe that conquered another tribe, and they would sell them. You know, so we all have an assorted past, so just keep it, if you want to teach history, teach the whole story, so we're not just singling out one aspect.
And I get where you're coming from, but try to focus on this bill.
Okay, that's, I just wanted to, just the definition of DEI, I thought was getting a little off. So I was just trying to bring it
Yeah,
a little
I
clearer.
agree, and I think most everybody would agree that the entire story needs to be told.
Yeah.
There's always two sides to the story, and it's not fair when just one side is presented. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, I would agree both sides need to be presented. Any other public comment in the audience? Anybody else? Going once, going twice. We have one person online. Clayton, if you'd bring them in, please.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Trying to pull up my screen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Laura Pavey, and I am in support of House Bill 147, which addresses important concerns about how government agencies approach diversity, equity, and inclusion in our state. This bill tackles several issues that matters to Wyoming families and taxpayers. First, it emphasizes treating people as individuals, not as members of a group defined by race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. It reinforces that we should judge by the content of our character, abilities, and not by the things we cannot control. The bill protects students and employees from being forced to take part in programs that may go against their personal beliefs, upholding their freedoms to think and act according to their conscience. Our schools should focus on equipping students with the knowledge and skills they need to succeed. We've seen troubling trends in our national education reports, like the National Assessment of Education Progress, showing declines in reading and math proficiencies. We need to prioritize the core subjects rather than divert resources to ideological programs. I want to emphasize, this bill is not about disrespecting anyone. It is about ensuring that Wyoming government entities treat everyone with equal dignity and respect, without making assumptions or placing blame based off of a group identity. It also protects any teacher who suggests one race, religion, gender, or background is inherently better or worse than another. I ask that you support HB 147. It aligns with Wyoming's values of individual liberty, equal treatment under the law, and an education system that builds skills and knowledge rather than promoting a specific viewpoint. Our schools and government institutions should be a place where merit is the standard, individual responsibility is valued, and everyone is treated with respect, no matter their background. This bill will help keep those values at the heart of our public education institutions. Thank you, and I stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right, thank you very much for your testimony. One last chance, any public comment in the room? Okay, oh man, come on up. I would ask that you make it quick because we're getting short on time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would encourage you to pass this House Bill 147. I'm curious about the people who.
Did you state your name? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
My name is Tom Schmidt. I'm from Laramie. I just represent myself. But I'm curious about the people who always bring up they want to know the true history. And I'm curious, do they want to know about the history of the Irish slaves in America? Do they want to know the history of the black slave owners? Or the people in the North who owned slaves after the Civil War? Do they want to know about the European slaves in Muslim countries? And how some Muslim countries still do slavery? That's all, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. The bringer of the bill, do you have any final comments before we close the public hearing? God, close public comment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. Great testimony, feedback for your committee. I would just state that regarding the educational concerns, our good Wyoming Department of Education supported this bill. I work with them to make a few changes on the other side when this went through the Education Committee in the House. And to the good student from UW, I believe her name was Sophia, I would just state that it's been a joy to see her engage in the political process this session. And I too share the same concerns as her in regards to anti-Semitism, because I have many friends that are Jewish as well and love them dearly. And I don't want to erase history by any means with this bill. It's not what the bill does. And so just a few statements there, but just ask for your favorable consideration, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, seeing no more public comment, public comment is closed. Committee, what's your preference here?
Second.
Senator Pearson has moved the bill, seconded by Senator Ide. Excuse me, are there any amendments? I didn't write anything down.
Question?
Seeing no amendments being put forth, or call for the question.
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 147. Senator Crago,
Excused.
Senator Ide,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
He has left his absentee voting form, and he has voted aye.
Senator Pearson,
Aye.
Chairman French.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is 4 aye and 1 excused.
All right. House Bill 147 has passed the committee. Any other business to come? I need to stop since I can't talk. All right. We're adjourned.